And we are live, Believe Nation. Happy Tuesday. Tuesday is my YouTube day, so I'm spending the day making videos for the channels, content for you guys to enjoy, consume, learn from, get inspired by, etc. I like having one day per week that's all I have to focus on. It's just making videos. You know, it's just this morning had a really good stretch, maybe more productive than I've been on making YouTube videos. So super excited by that. But this is my little break to come live with you guys and also introduce you to someone very special. Let's see, I think I saw him in the chat. Pablo, you're live. Angela, your lives were awesome. I tried to get him just before and leave a comment, but you ended just before. Anyway, keep it up, guys. Let's go. We're bringing him in. You're gonna love this guy. You are going to love this guy. Here we go. I just sent you the invite, Deacon. Connecting. And here we go.
Hey there, how's it going? I've never done this before. Glad to be on.
All right, Instagram Live. We're popping your cherry. I love it. This is Instagram Live, and then we download this and put it to the YouTube channel to get even more exposure there. But ladies and gentlemen, this is Dakin. He is from Prime Movers Lab, venture capitalist, just raised $245 million for their second fund, and we're going to talk today about what he's up to, how to raise capital, and all the crazy breakthroughs that he's going through with his fund. Deacon, welcome aboard, man.
Thanks for having me, Evan. Thanks for introducing me to Instagram Live too.
I love it. Hey, you are into some crazy breakthrough science. Instagram Live is not that big a breakthrough, but I love it. I love that we can do it. Dude, I was looking through your portfolio and everything you're up to, and most of it is just way above my head in terms of ability to understand and knowledge and comprehend. And I guess that's kind of the point in what you're doing, right? Like you're actually going after breakthrough science and taking on industries where most VCs kind of don't touch. Is that the business model?
Yeah, exactly. So I had built 2 tech companies before, and what I really realized is there was this lack of investor focus on breakthrough scientific inventions. So that's what we focus on. It's things like energy, transportation, infrastructure, manufacturing, biotech. And these are the things that can actually make a real difference to the average human being's life. And I think if we look over the next 30 years, these are the types of tech companies that are going to define not just financial returns, but huge contributions to humanity. And that's really why we started the firm.
You look at your Instagram, you've got like bionic arms and you've got, space projects and all. It's like, Star Trek is here. It's happening with everything you guys are making. It's amazing.
I like to say that what we're doing is we're investing in things that sound like science fiction, but are actually reality here today and now. And we've got like this team of scientists that let us go really deep in all of these areas so we can distinguish between the stuff that's, too far out to be realistic today, but is like the Star Trek of today where you're going to actually have results for the average human being.
Well, let's talk about that because I think a lot of VCs would think it's too far away. I'm not going to get a return. We can't commercialize fast enough. And I know your focus is on commercialization and good for humanity. Right? It's like that combination. So for everybody, it's like, it's way too far away. How are you speeding up the time to commercialization?
Well, I think it's a great point. There's these 3 big myths that exist out there about hard tech or deep tech or breakthrough science, whatever you want to call it. And it's that it takes longer, that it's higher risk, and that it's more capital intensive. And I actually believe, and we've shown this with the performance of our first fund, that the opposite is true. If you're investing in these things at the right stage where the IP has already been demonstrated, it's already working, but they haven't yet turned it into a product that the market wants to consume, these can actually be faster to market, lower risk, and less capital intensive. And that's why our first fund is up over 8x in just under 3 years, because we've picked companies that have these kind of crazy sounding things like in-space transportation or industrial solar heat or aquaponics farming or a coronavirus vaccine. And we've invested at that inflection point where they're now ready to commercialize it. And that's, I think, the whole key. We've got about a dozen scientists between our team, actually a few dozen scientists between our team and outside advisors that are the world-leading thinkers in each of these areas, so we can go really deep, really fast and figure out, is this one of those ones that's about to pop?
So is it just that you guys have a better team than the other VCs out there?
Well, I think there's really 2 things we are really grateful for the opportunity to be able to contribute to the world. One is the level of scientific depth we have. I'm a physicist by background, and then we have a team of people who are much, much smarter than me evaluating these things. And then we also, I think, go really deep with our founders. So the second piece is service. We have partners who are focused on executive coaching, psychology. I know you had one of our partners, Tony, on recently. We've got folks doing government relations, PR, talent, all these things, because it's not enough to just give somebody capital. Really, these founders need support, advice, and real partnership and friendship to help them build their company, because these are tough companies. It takes a period of time, and we roll up our sleeves and get in the trenches with people, kind of doing whatever it takes to make sure they not only succeed, but they enjoy the process.
So talk about getting partners. I know, so you mentioned Tony. That's Tony Robbins. For everybody, kind of watching, may not know who Tony is. You've got astronauts as part of your team. Like, how did you go off with this mission of yours to create this fund and attract all these amazing humans to want to join in?
Well, actually, one of the CEOs I've backed before says something I think is really relevant here. Blake Scholl, who founded Boom Supersonic. This is a supersonic jet company. It's just as easy to go, or actually, it's just as hard to go build a company that's going after something small as something that's big. And in some ways, it's actually easier to go build a company that's going after a big thing, because it inspires people around you to want to get involved, right? And that's from the team, that's from advisors, that's from investors. So the bigger the mission you go after, ironically enough, the more people show up to help you, because it's actually worthwhile pursuing.
You know, what I love about you is I've talked to a lot of VCs, and you feel more like an entrepreneur than a VC, if that makes sense. It's like...
Absolutely. I mean, the way this started, I was sitting in the hot tub with my wife, and I was kind of complaining about how broken VC was in this particular sector. Yeah. And she's like, "You're an entrepreneur. That's a problem. Fix the problem. Build a product or a service." And so we did. Like, I think of us as entrepreneurs who are building a product and service for founders. And that product is Prime Movers Lab, where the least useful thing we provide is the capital. It's all of the other supplementary technical expertise, portfolio support, coaching that makes us really not an investment shop, but company builders who happen to have pre-raised some capital.
So where do scientists or kind of entrepreneurs with a science background, where do they struggle when they're trying to raise capital?
There's a lot of places. I think historically, if you do a PhD and become an expert in neuroscience or something like that, you may be very good at communicating to an academic audience, but you may not know how to tell a business story and how to market kind of what the commercial opportunity is. So that's one thing that we often, even like, I think these are simple things that when you frame what your mission is to serve founders, it's really different than if your mission is to invest in founders. Those are subtle shifts, but really important. And of course, we end up investing in founders, but in the diligence process, we'll often be interacting with a founder, and we'll be giving them feedback and advice about how they could be telling their story better from the first pitch. Even if they haven't committed to work with us, we haven't committed to work with them, so that they get that benefit as they're pitching to multiple investors. And I think that's one simple example. There's all the operational pieces, right? You're not prepared necessarily if you've built some amazing breakthrough to sell, to market, to hire. And so we have kind of all the resources you need across the spectrum to prepare to deal with each of those challenges, which frankly are, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. People have figured out how to do those things, and you can take playbooks and copy those and apply them to the particular business that's being built.
And how much of a business background do you think somebody has to have? Like when they're pitching to be, someone's pitching you, hey, you just raised $245 million. Now you got all these people emailing you and say, hey, I want some of that, Deacon, give me some. What are you looking for? So yes, the hardcore tech, the breakthrough science. What else are you looking for from the founder, and how much of a team and complete package do they need to have?
So we evaluate companies on 4 criteria. So the first criteria is the founder and the founding team, the management team around them. And so we're looking for people who really are relentless and they're willing to take feedback. Those are like the 2 most important criteria, I think, in any successful founder. Because when you start a company, you're really going after this like huge vision, and you need to be laser focused on, I'm going to do whatever it takes to make sure that this vision succeeds. But you need to be really flexible and adaptable to what's the pathway to getting to that success, because you're going to learn from your customers, you're going to learn from investors, you're going to learn from your team, learn from partners, things that are often the exact details about how to get to that. So that's the first piece. The second piece is the technology, of course. There needs to be real defensible intellectual property for our particular investment thesis and the way that we invest. Third is the business. And so, often founders will come to us that are clearly in love with the science of what they've done, and they happen to be building a business, that tends not to be the right exact founder for us. We want folks who really want to make an impact on the world, that are wanting to make a big contribution, and they see the business as a vehicle to scale their science out to serve humanity. And so there has to be a big market, there has to be a big pain point, and there has to be thoughtfulness about the business. They don't have to have all the answers. You're not going to have all the answers at the beginning, but there has to be an orientation towards that. And then, of course, we're investing at a stage where we're putting in $2 to $5 million. So it has to be kind of an early stage company that's just at the beginning of that commercialization pathway.
For the first one of taking feedback, how do you test for that? Do you have tests or hoops that you throw people through, or is it just a vibe that you get when you first meet them?
Yeah, I think you get a vibe at first, but we give people feedback during the process, and we see how they incorporate it. And, there's varying levels of reaction to that. So if somebody's got like a very strong sense of ego, they might be quite resistant, and that's quite obvious. Kind of the best founders tend to say something like, "Oh, thank you. That's like really useful information." And they don't like, I'm not saying, I'm not arrogant enough to think that we have the answers or that we know the right way to do things. I think that we can be a useful partner in discussing things. And so they may come back and reflect on that and say, actually, this piece I think really applies. This piece doesn't apply so much. And we love that, because on the other end of the spectrum, you can have people who are like, I'm just going to do whatever you tell me to do. And that's not the right founder mentality either. They need to be critical thinkers in choosing feedback from many different sources and identifying, this is the parts that I'm going to implement.
How often do you have to take them out of the CEO role?
Yeah, we don't view, there's definitely VC firms that that's their orientation. That's what they're going to do.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we're backing founders with a great technology and business opportunity. And if the founder isn't, like, this is what we're trying to assess with the feedback piece. If the founder's not performing, we will come and deliver them feedback, and we will try and support them in developing them and getting them to the place where they can tackle the challenge ahead of them. If they can't, we will at a certain point say, hey, we don't think that you're the right person to be running this. We think you should bring in a partner or an ally that helps you do this and complements your skill set. But if they're not willing to do that, we're not going to force them to do that. We're not in the business of forcing CEOs out. At that point, we're going to focus our attention and resources somewhere else that is accepting the feedback and is accepting the guidance that we're providing.
Right. Is that something that's already kind of, you're road mapping it when you're first meeting them? Like before you even sign a deal, it's like, okay, is this the person who can actually build a $100 million company plus? And well, if not...
Sorry to interrupt. Basically, at those first conversations, we're discussing with them, not just where do they want their company to be and what kind of outcome do they want to produce for the world, but what do they want to become? And often with scientific founders, they're very upfront, like, I'm the CTO, I'm the chief scientist, I happen to be holding the CEO role right now. At some point, we're going to need to bring in a CEO. And that's fantastic. We're very comfortable with that, as long as the person is self-aware, reflective, and introspective, where they're considering what's right for the business. There's a great phrase, do you want to be rich or do you want to be king? And it's like a little crass, but I think it captures the point, where do you want to see your technology make a meaningful difference to hundreds of millions or billions of people around the world? And at a certain point, if it turns out that you're holding that title and you're guiding the ship isn't the right answer, are you willing to give it up? And that's something we always ask founders to understand. What's the motivation? Is it about them or is it about the mission?
What do you think some of the biggest mistakes these founders are making when they're pitching VCs, or maybe like a VC like you might have a slightly different way of operating?
Yeah, I think one subtle, easy thing that people can do is listen to the language that the other party's using. So if I'm presenting to an investor that's a potential investor for us, the first thing I always do is I ask them as many questions as I possibly can, to the point where they might even get a little bit annoyed that I haven't started talking, I haven't started communicating, but I'm hearing what matters to them. I'm hearing what successes they've had when they were investing in similar things, what failures they've had, so I know which things to avoid focusing on. And I'm getting as much information from them before I start telling my story as possible, because then I know how to communicate my story in a way that's fitting for them. And I might even assess in that period, like, hey, like, this actually isn't even a good person, and be like really blunt about that. Like, we're probably not a fit for you. I don't want to waste your time. And I think we often have this mindset when we're trying to convince someone of something, of presuming that we know that we how to convince them up front. We generally do, because we've told our story a lot, but our story has to be customized to that person's mindset, to that person's psychology, to what matters to them.
How about your, I mean, it's just such a different take, right? Like, I love your vibe. I love the entrepreneur mindset that you have. talking about your stepping up in front of the camera and doing Instagram lives. Like VCs aren't doing this kind of stuff, right? Like how, I know it's not about the ego and you and, you know, look at me, Dakin. So why the push to come in front of the camera and spread the message?
And sorry, I think you cut out for a sec, Evan. Do I have you there? Okay.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, sweet. So yeah, I mean, look, it's definitely not about me. If it was just like a personal preference, I probably wouldn't do this. I'm not like a very public-facing person, as you can tell by the fact that I've never done an Instagram Live. That being said, I think the mission that our companies are on is so important for the world. As I said, we've got companies that are feeding the planet, that are providing clean energy, that are taking us off to new worlds, that are ending the pandemic. And I think it's important to spread the message about those companies. And I think of each of us as vehicles to accomplish some purpose here. And so I'm a vehicle to help attract great capital to those types of founders that wouldn't necessarily be flowing there so that these important missions can happen. And there's a small piece in doing that. I appreciate you giving us the opportunity to do that so that we can get the word out there and we can get more phenomenal founders funded that are working on really mission critical problems.
Well, you're getting lots of love in the comments. You're doing great. First Instagram Live, applauded and respected. Thumbs up. I love it. Which of the investments that you've made from your first fund are you, I know you like them all, but what do you like, super, like your passion project that you're just most excited by, just to give people a sense of what you're getting into?
Yeah, I mean, I think one that may be really relevant for this audience is we have a coronavirus vaccine. It's a company called COVAX. And if you look at what's happening with vaccine distribution in the world today, a lot of first world countries have kind of hoarded the supply of Moderna or Pfizer or Johnson & Johnson. And those vaccines often have problems with cold storage where, for example, they're not appropriate for like Africa or Latin America or Southeast Asia where there isn't the distribution mechanisms for storing a vaccine at negative 20, 30, whatever degrees Celsius. So we invested in a company that is a safe, easily manufacturable, and highly distributable and very cost-effective vaccine, COVAX, which is going and serving basically underdeveloped countries in Africa, Latin America, Southeast Asia, as I was saying. And I'm just excited that we can use these kinds of technologies to have a big impact on our human family around the planet and make it so that the pandemic doesn't just end in the first world, it ends globally.
One of the things I talk to my audience a lot about is making money has got to be in your top 5 list of priorities if you're an entrepreneur, but it can't be number 1. Like there's the mission and the purpose at number 1, and then money has to be 2 to 5. But if it's too far down the list, you don't have a business either because you got to make money. How do you, I think a lot of people would have the perspective of VCs as just being cutthroat, do whatever it takes to make money. How do you balance the purpose of the companies you're investing into and the mission with the need to make money to keep it growing?
Yeah, I think it's what you said. It's about order. So everyone wants to have a purpose. Everyone wants to make money. Like those are just universal things meeting basic human needs that we have. The order matters a lot, though. If you over prioritize making money, you're going to lose out, I ultimately think, on much larger opportunities because you're going to make short-term oriented decisions rather than long-term oriented decisions. If you focus on the big picture, what's the mission? What's the state of the world that I want to create? And it's an inspiring, large state of the world, and there's a big gap there. You're going to produce plenty of financial results too. You have to be thoughtful about those things. You have to be strategic and tactical. But yeah, I think this is fundamentally one of the biggest problems with VC. Is VC has historically been far too oriented towards using founders as their products, basically, rather than delivering a product to founders to help them achieve their mission. And as I said, like our first fund is right now on track to be one of the best performing funds of 2018, less than 3 years after starting the firm. So I think that we have this notion that these are like things we have to choose between. We don't have to choose between them. If we go after big missions and we figure out how to serve a lot of people, Tony says this, I don't know if he said it when he was on with you, but business is the ultimate spiritual game. You're trying to figure out how to add more value than anybody else in the marketplace. And if you do that for a large number of people with a valuable product, you're going to produce great financial results too.
So, as I look at you, I see the two differences in that one, you're just the mindset and the mantra and the caring for entrepreneurs and not just investing into them, but being their partner, but then also kind of like the deep tech, hardcore science that people are afraid to jump into. That might be a little harder to emulate, but the whole actually caring about founders, is that something that you hope permeates VC culture and people start looking at you as the model?
Well, I don't need them to look at us as the model, but I hope that it permeates the culture. And I think, to be fair, there are other VCs out there that take that approach and that mindset as well. You know, a good friend is Joe Lonsdale, who founded 8VC, and they do this really well in enterprise software and biotech and logistics. So they're definitely founder-friendly firms out there. They're too far and few between. And I think as we see a proliferation of people building startups, we're going to see a proliferation of this mindset and expansion of this mindset. And it's already starting to happen.
For someone who's trying to raise, like if it's 2 to 5 million that they're going to get, you know, from your fund, what's the process like to apply? Is it just go to your website, there's an email, send us your executive summary? Is it you have to be introduced? Like, how are you actually fielding most of your inquiries?
Yeah, so we see about 3,000 deals a year. And definitely there's a weighting in our preference to somebody who's made the effort of getting an introduction somehow through their network versus just applying online. And there happens to be a higher quality because look, social proof matters. Social proof is important to kind of validating things. And it also shows it's not that hard to get an intro to us. You know, like we have big networks. And if you didn't take the time to do that, it kind of, it can feel a little like lazy, but like, look, we look at everything and we do a quick screen where we're evaluating founders on some of the things we talked about before, because that's the easiest thing to assess. The business, the deal, the technology, those take more time. But the people, I think you can form very quick evaluations of what's driving people, what's important to people. And it doesn't take a lot. You just have to ask a simple question. What's important to you?
And just for people who maybe haven't done a deal before, if somebody's raising the 2 to 5 million from you guys, what kind of percentage roughly are they looking at giving up?
It really depends on the stage of the company and what they've accomplished so far from a technical milestones and from a commercialization perspective. But at a seed stage like that, you're generally selling between 10 and 25% of the company, depending on where you're at.
Yeah, that's actually pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, look, we want to be aligned with our CEOs, and we want to make sure they have tons of ownership because they're going to be driving the bus to success.
And are people usually already having angels when they come to you? Or are you trying to just be a super angel almost, coming in at a much higher valuation? We've done some very early stage deals where we're the first money in. Often, though, there's been grant money that's gone into these types of technologies, non-dilutive funding, either from universities or from government, that have gotten them to the point where they can now go raise institutional capital. Would there be any, I think a lot of people make mistakes in the early stages of their business, giving up too much equity to a bad partner, to a bad angel, just throwing a whole bunch of equity at a dentist who gave them $500,000 for their business or whatever. Are there any kind of no-goes when you look at them? Like, I love this person, what they're doing, but just the mistakes they've made with raising in the past is just preventing you from making an investment?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely look at what the cap table is, and are the people who are working on the business the majority owners of the business, so that incentives are aligned and that value creation's aligned. I wouldn't say that there's like hard and fast rules there, but there often what will happen in these situations, it's a good example, particularly in med companies, is professor founders who are working very part-time will have way too big of chunks of ownership. And like people don't often think about equity right at the beginning because they think about what's the value that's been created to date. And sure, the professor probably has driven most of the value to date, but if the professor is not quitting their job and working on this full time, they're not driving most of the value going forward. And equity grants are in proportion to what's the future value that's going to be created, not to what the past value has been.
So would you go into a situation like that and say, hey, I love this company, but professor, you have to go from 50 down to 10% if we're going to make a deal?
Yeah, we'll say that. We'll say it kindly and lovingly, and
right,
and with humility that we may be wrong. Someone else may fund them anyways. But just like those, I think one thing that people get really off on with feedback is like that's not a nice message to hear necessarily as the professor, but it's an important, like, we'd be doing them a disservice if we didn't tell them that, because if we just like, oh no, it's not a fit, like they're not actually learning from that process. And by communicating what are the things that are not a fit with care and with compassion, I think we're ultimately serving founders even if we don't end up investing with them. And that's for me what it's all about. It's not like I love the companies that we invest in. The mission's much broader than that, though. It's, as you said, having a investor ecosystem that focuses on compassion and on being friendly to founders.
Yeah, what I love about that is you're not just saying no, but then they don't know how to fix it or what the problem is, because that's what they're probably getting from all the other VCs too, is just a no. But they're sitting there thinking, hey, we got this great product or service, but they don't know how to go off and improve it. So I love that you're giving feedback even if you're not going to invest. Dude, it's crazy how time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, definitely.
If people want to learn more about you or Prime Movers, or like, where do you want them to go? We can link that up in the description of the YouTube video. Where do you want them to hit you guys up on?
Yeah, I think our website's a great spot to start, primemoverslab.com, and there's a contact email there if people want to get in touch.
Awesome. Well, I'm super excited to see all of the crazy inventions that you are bringing out. And if you can combine Star Trek with the humanity and with the force for good, man, I don't understand the science, but I'm cheering you on from the sidelines, trying to send entrepreneur love your way. So thank you for the time, man. Really appreciate it. Love your soul. And I'm just pumped for what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you for what you're doing. And just a pleasure to be on.
Thanks, Dakin. Take care, man.
Bye.
Cheers.